Welcome, chosen ones. When the weight of truth becomes unbearable, even the proudest soul must eventually surrender. Picture this: someone who has wronged you or kept secrets from you, lying awake at night, feeling as though a heavy stone presses down on their chest. They try to sleep, but guilt has woven itself deeply into their soul, and each toss and turn is a futile attempt to escape the conviction. But here's the twist: God won't allow them any peace until they come clean to you. This isn't just guilt. It's almost as if they're being pursued by their own conscience, urged by divine hands to confess. Imagine the weight they feel, knowing they cannot find rest until they face the truth. Did you know that studies have shown most people harboring deep guilt experience physical symptoms? They may feel their hearts racing, their minds restless, and for the chosen ones this effect amplifies. Your spiritual energy, pure and potent, has a way of unsettling those who have crossed you. It's as if your presence alone magnifies their conscience, leaving them unable to hide from the truth. Perhaps they wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, whispering, "I really need to call them." What makes them suddenly want to confess? They're on the verge of a spiritual reckoning, a moment where their spirit has no choice but to come clean. And as you witness this, it's almost like watching divine justice unfold before your very eyes. If you feel inspired by this, comment 999 to claim your own peace and clarity. Also, a heartfelt thank you to those supporting this message through super thanks. It truly helps us share these insights with more chosen souls. Now, let's dive deeper into what this confession might reveal and how your role as a chosen one has set the stage for this powerful moment. God's chosen ones, someone will confess to you. God won't let them rest until they come clean. One, they can't escape the divine pressure on their conscience. When someone wrongs a chosen one, the weight of that wrongdoing is unlike anything they've experienced. This guilt becomes relentless, almost as if it carries a life of its own, a force they cannot shake, no matter how hard they try. Imagine trying to hide from something so deeply woven into the soul. Every quiet moment brings it back to the surface, each ignored thought only tightening the grip of remorse. This isn't mere guilt. It's as if the universe, or more precisely God himself, is refusing to let them ignore the truth. Psalm 32:3-4 speaks to this experience. When I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long. For day and night your hand was heavy on me, my strength was sapped as in the heat of summer. This verse paints a vivid picture of how God's divine pressure can weigh down on those who try to bury the truth. They may try to push their actions to the back of their mind, but it only intensifies the pressure, haunting them during their most vulnerable times. Every fleeting moment of silence, each attempt to find peace, is interrupted by a gnawing reminder that something is wrong. Small annoyances in their life become unbearable, patience fades, and even rest seems to betray them, as uneasy dreams or bouts of sleeplessness settle in. Have you ever wondered what it would feel like if your own conscience turned against you, refusing to grant peace until you made things right? This is what they experience, a never-ending divine urge pushing them toward confession. Imagine the power of divine justice, a force that grows heavier the more they resist. Every night spent staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of their actions, is a testament to the inescapable reach of God's justice. Numbers 32:23 warns us, "Be sure your sin will find you out." It is as if this truth has become their reality, an unshakable force pressing on their heart like an immovable stone. How long can one survive under such weight? For them, it becomes clear that the only relief, the only escape, lies in confession. They must acknowledge their wrongdoings, not simply to admit what they've done, but to unburden their soul and regain peace. In resisting the urge to confess, they delay their own freedom. And yet, the path to redemption, though uncomfortable, is open before them. They may not yet realize it, but this process of reckoning is as much for their healing as it is for justice. So, what drives them to finally come clean? It's not just a matter of righting a wrong, it's survival, a desperate need to free themselves from a weight they cannot carry alone. As God's chosen one, have you ever sensed that your presence alone stirred something deep in others, making it impossible for them to hide their true selves? This is the power of divine alignment. Those who have crossed you are left facing the undeniable truth. They cannot escape God's call for honesty. 2. They realize you are part of their spiritual test. When someone wrongs a chosen one, it's often far more than a momentary lapse in judgment or selfish act. It becomes a profound test on a spiritual level, though they may not initially realize its full significance. Deep within, they start to sense that this act against you is part of a larger, almost sacred challenge, one that forces them to confront their own integrity. There's something unique about the energy of a chosen one, an unmistakable spiritual gravity that reveals both light and shadow in those around them. When someone fails to treat you with respect or honor, they're not just failing you, they're failing a test of character, a test that has been divinely set to bring them to a crossroad of choice and growth. This isn't merely about a fleeting sense of guilt, it's about facing a spiritual reckoning that could influence the direction of their soul. In the Bible, moments like this are reflected in the lives of many who encountered the chosen ones of God and found their spirits exposed. Take Judas, for example. His betrayal of Jesus wasn't just an act of betrayal. It was his ultimate test, one that revealed the depths of his own soul. He failed to align with a higher calling, leaving him with an unbearable weight that eventually led to a moment of tragic realization. When someone wrongs you, they are often faced with a similar realization, even if it's subtle at first. They become painfully aware that the gravity of their actions holds consequences not only in your relationship, but in their own spiritual journey. Have you ever noticed how your mere presence seems to demand honesty from others, compelling them to reveal their true intentions? This awareness of a spiritual test forces them to face the truth. They cannot simply ignore what they've done. Their soul's growth or stagnation becomes undeniably linked to you. This wrongdoing, whether it was a betrayal, deception, or a simple failure to honor you, transforms into a shadow that looms over their conscience, refusing to fade. Just as King Saul found himself repeatedly conflicted in his actions toward David, sensing that David was a man of God, yet still acting out of jealousy and fear, people who wrong a chosen one are often caught in a struggle. They feel the need to make amends, as though their spiritual progress depends on it. To confess is to choose the path of growth, to seek redemption not only in your eyes, but in the eyes of God. This realization drives them toward you, not only to ease their guilt, but out of a deeper need to realign themselves with a higher calling. Their spirit knows that without acknowledging the truth, they risk staying stuck in a lower consciousness, forever marked by the choice they made against you. Have you ever wondered why those who've wronged you often come back, seeking to make things right, even if it means facing their own shame? This journey toward confession is more than a way to soothe their conscience. It's a desperate attempt to reclaim their sense of worth, to move beyond the shadow that haunts them. They're drawn to you by an invisible force, realizing that only through honesty and reconciliation can they find release. In this way, you become a part of their redemption story, a figure in their spiritual narrative that they must face to evolve. 3. Your presence disrupts their energy field. When someone wrongs a chosen one, It's as if their entire energy field is thrown into disarray. The unique frequency of a chosen one radiates with clarity, honesty, and authenticity, creating an atmosphere that acts like a mirror to those around them. Anyone carrying hidden guilt or wrongdoing finds it nearly impossible to remain at peace in this light. Your energy doesn't just coexist with theirs, it actively disrupts any falsehoods, surfacing the truth they're so desperately trying to bury. They may attempt to put on a calm facade, but being around you creates a sensation that is deeply unsettling. Their guilt, once tucked away, now seems to pulse under the scrutiny of your presence. Consider how Jesus' presence affected those around him. In John 8, when he stood with the woman accused of adultery, his silent strength and the purity of his truth exposed the Pharisees' hypocrisy, forcing them to confront their own sins. In your case, when someone has betrayed you, they can't simply avoid the discomfort of what they've done. Your presence becomes like a tuning fork, resonating in a way that forces everything hidden within them to vibrate, uncomfortably revealing what they would rather ignore. Have you ever noticed that when you're around, people sometimes seem more tense, almost like they can sense that you see beyond their masks? This isn't just a psychological discomfort, it's almost physical. When they stand before you, their inner guilt surfaces, and they feel as though their secrets are practically visible. It's as if the very energy field you carry demands authenticity, pulling up anything inauthentic within them like a tide exposing what's hidden beneath the water. Like Saul, who was troubled by an evil spirit in the presence of David's purity and divine favor, those who have wronged you feel exposed, restless, and often defensive. Your presence is a reminder of their dishonesty, of the weight they have tried to suppress. Over time, this discomfort builds, pushing them toward a breaking point. Being around you feels like carrying a weight they can't release, an internal ticking clock counting down to confession. They may find themselves growing irritable, restless, or even paranoid, almost as if you can see right through their defenses. How many times have you seen people struggle to look you in the eye or seem visibly uneasy in your presence? This reaction is the undeniable power of your spiritual energy. The closer they are to you, the more impossible it becomes to ignore their wrongdoing. Proverbs 28:1 speaks to this experience. The wicked flee though no one pursues, but the righteous are as bold as a lion. This verse resonates with your effect on them. They feel the need to flee or come clean, not because of any external pressure, but because their own guilt has turned unbearable. At this point, confession becomes their only path to peace. It's as though they're seeking to rebalance their own energy field, hoping that by admitting the truth, they can finally find relief. Being near you with unresolved guilt feels like carrying a storm inside them, a storm that can only be calmed by honesty. Have you ever thought about how powerful your presence truly is, that even without words, you compel others to confront themselves? Confession for them isn't just a release, it's a way to restore balance, to end the inner turmoil that your presence amplifies. And so, sooner or later, they will feel compelled to face the truth, driven by a force beyond themselves to reconcile and seek peace. 4. Confessing becomes their last hope to stop bad luck. When someone crosses a chosen one, they unknowingly invite misfortune into their life, a wave of setbacks and obstacles that they can't seem to escape. Initially, these disruptions appear as minor inconveniences, like a missed deadline or a minor disagreement. But as the days pass, they find themselves caught in a relentless storm of bad luck. Doors that once opened effortlessly now seem bolted shut, opportunities slip away, and small issues snowball into significant problems. What may have begun as a few off days soon feels like a dark cloud, casting shadows over every aspect of their life. For them, it's as if an invisible force is dragging them down, throwing their plans into disarray and turning routine tasks into uphill battles. In the Bible, we see this concept mirrored in the lives of those who acted unjustly toward God's chosen. Consider Pharaoh in the book of Exodus, who faced one calamity after another after refusing to let the Israelites go, each plague more intense than the last. Just as Pharaoh's refusal to act rightly brought upon him an inescapable series of misfortunes, those who wrong a chosen one often find themselves entangled in an unseen but undeniable justice. At first, they may dismiss these events as simple misfortune, but with time, the string of failures and frustrations becomes too consistent, too targeted to ignore. Have you ever wondered why some people seem trapped in a cycle of bad luck after betraying or harming you? This is the weight of divine balance tipping back toward justice. As their troubles intensify, they reach a point where all their efforts to regain control fail. No matter how hard they work, how many plans they make, or how positive they try to remain, nothing seems to shift their circumstances. It's as if they're fighting against a tide that refuses to recede. They may attempt to ignore it, but each failed endeavor feels like a whisper of cosmic justice, reminding them of their misdeeds. Proverbs 11:5 states, "The righteousness of the blameless makes their paths straight, but the wicked are brought down by their own wickedness." This truth begins to dawn on them slowly, the realization that their misfortune is tied to their actions against you. At some point, the idea that their suffering might be a result of wrongdoing against a chosen one becomes impossible to dismiss. They start to wonder if their actions have triggered a type of spiritual backlash, a justice that demands balance. This thought, initially a faint whisper, grows louder as each setback intensifies. The concept of bad luck shifts into something more profound, an acknowledgement that they may be under a form of divine correction. They reach a breaking point where they realize that confessing to you might be the only way to break this cycle, a way to lift the unseen weight that has thrown their life off course. In their desperation, confession transforms from a reluctant option into a lifeline. Owning up to their actions feels like the only way to escape the spiral of misfortune that has taken over their life. The thought of clearing the slate, of finally breaking free from the shadow that lingers over them, becomes more appealing than preserving their pride. This isn't just about seeking your forgiveness, it's an attempt to realign their life and find peace. Psalm 34:21 reminds us, "Evil will slay the wicked, the foes of the righteous will be condemned." They see confession as a path back to stability, a way to reconcile not only with you, but also with the forces that have turned against them. Confession then becomes their final hope, the only way they can imagine escaping the consequences of their actions. Have you noticed that those who hurt you often return, seeking not just forgiveness but relief? This isn't merely a plea for absolution, it's a way to end the misfortune that has taken over their life. They're driven by the desire for peace, a need to stop the downward spiral, and they realize that only by coming clean can they break free from this unseen but powerful force. 5. The unseen soul contract pulls them toward you. For many, the bond with a chosen one runs deeper than mere words or actions. It exists on a spiritual level that transcends everyday understanding. There is a profound sense of an unseen soul contract, an agreement set into motion before either of you entered this life. This contract signifies that, at a certain point, their journey would intersect with yours, testing both of your spirits and challenging them to choose integrity and growth. Wronging you is no random event. It's a spiritual lesson, a divinely appointed moment meant to awaken their conscience and guide them toward healing. In the Bible, we see the concept of divine relationships and soul-deep obligations through figures like Jonathan and David, whose bond was divinely inspired. Jonathan's loyalty to David was more than friendship. It was a soul-level commitment that transcended his father Saul's wishes. This connection, bound by a higher purpose, compelled Jonathan to uphold his integrity, even when it was difficult. Similarly, when someone wrongs a chosen one, their spirit feels an undeniable pull toward making amends, as though they are fulfilling a spiritual obligation etched within their soul. Have you ever felt that certain people were meant to be part of your life, even if their presence initially brought hardship or conflict? This unseen contract draws them back to you, compelling them to confess and make things right, not merely to relieve their guilt, but to satisfy a deeper purpose embedded in their soul's journey. It's as if they were given a sacred task to accomplish, one that cannot be ignored. They may not consciously recognize this connection, yet they feel it as a growing unease, a sense of something unfinished that keeps them out of alignment. Over time, the reluctance to confess weighs heavily on their spirit, creating a sense of emptiness or an inexplicable feeling of being incomplete. It's as if every day they delay brings them further away from their own truth. This pull toward confession is their spirit's way of saying, "You have unfinished business here." Avoiding it is not a path they can take without feeling increasingly lost, disconnected, and devoid of purpose. The Bible speaks to this kind of spiritual obligation in Matthew 5:23-24. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First, go and be reconciled to them, then come and offer your gift. This passage highlights that spiritual alignment often requires us to right our wrongs before we can find true peace. For them, fulfilling this soul contract means finally stepping into a moment of reckoning, a chance to make amends and align themselves with a higher calling. As they come to terms with this inner pull, they realize that confession is not just about an apology, it's a bridge to growth, a pivotal step toward the person they are meant to become. By facing you and admitting their mistakes, they fulfill their part of this spiritual agreement, unlocking a new level of understanding and self-awareness. The confession becomes more than a release. It's a transformative act, a way to restore their sense of purpose and find clarity on their path. Have you ever wondered why those who've wronged you feel drawn back to you, almost as if guided by a force they can't explain? This is the power of the unseen soul contract, an agreement that moves beyond guilt or regret, drawing them back to you to learn, grow, and finally be free to move forward. 6. They fear your spiritual power to expose them. When someone wrongs a chosen one, they soon realize they're not dealing with an ordinary situation or person. Deceiving a chosen one is not like hiding from someone unaware. It's as if they're trying to keep secrets from someone who can see past the surface. They begin to sense the depth of your spiritual insight, an intuition so sharp it feels almost otherworldly. This realization unnerves them, your ability to read between the lines, to sense unspoken truths, and to see through facades becomes a constant source of anxiety for them. They understand, perhaps for the first time, that they can't easily conceal their actions from you. In the Bible, we see the power of spiritual discernment in the story of Ananias and Sapphira in Acts 5:1-11. When they attempted to deceive Peter by withholding part of their wealth, Peter, filled with the Holy Spirit, saw through their lies immediately. This story illustrates the unsettling power of discernment bestowed upon those aligned with divine truth. Similarly, when someone wrongs you, they begin to fear that you may already know the truth, or that it's only a matter of time before you uncover it. The very thought of being exposed by someone with your spiritual insight creates a lingering unease. Have you noticed that those who have deceived you often act nervously, as though they're waiting for you to unmask them? Their anxiety grows with each passing day. They start to fear that any moment you might confront them with the truth they're so desperate to bury. Their secrets feel increasingly vulnerable in your presence, as if they could shatter under a single look or question from you. This sense of impending exposure compels them to consider confession as their only option. They aren't merely afraid of your judgment, they fear the spiritual consequences of withholding truth from someone as attuned as you are. The longer they resist, the more they feel they're inviting a greater, perhaps divine force to reveal their wrongdoings. They stand at the edge of this cliff, realizing that with each lie they hold on to, they're inviting an even stronger force to intervene. Proverbs 28:13 says, "Whoever conceals their sins does not prosper, but the one who confesses and renounces them finds mercy." This wisdom echoes in their mind as they feel the weight of their hidden actions. The thought of confession shifts from being an option to an urgent necessity, a way to prevent the reckoning they feel is coming. Confessing to them becomes a means of softening the potential blow, a chance to mitigate the spiritual backlash they sense hovering on the horizon. It's as though they believe that by taking the first step, by revealing the truth themselves, they might lessen the judgment they fear will come if they continue to hide. Have you noticed that those who wrong you often feel driven to admit their actions, almost as if compelled by something greater than themselves? In your presence, their need to confess becomes desperate, a last-ditch effort to escape an inner storm only you seem capable of unleashing. They realize that without truth, there can be no peace, and that the power to lift this burden lies in finally coming clean to you. 7. Their ego is finally defeated by spiritual consequence. For those who wrong a chosen one, admitting fault would usually be inconceivable. Their ego has long served as a fortress, shielding them from the vulnerability that comes with acknowledging mistakes. This pride convinces them that they're always in control, too strong to be moved by remorse or regret. But this time, something profound shifts. The usual pangs of guilt are replaced by a weight far heavier, a force that seems almost oppressive, as though the universe itself is demanding they face the truth. For the first time, they're up against a consequence so immense that their ego begins to crumble, unable to withstand this spiritual reckoning. In the Bible, we witness such a humbling experience in the story of King Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel 4. Known for his towering pride, Nebuchadnezzar was ultimately humbled by God when his arrogance reached a breaking point. He was stripped of his power, forced to wander and live like an animal until he acknowledged the sovereignty of God. Similarly, those who wrong you begin to feel an overwhelming sense that their usual defenses, pride, denial, and self-righteousness, are powerless. They realize that no amount of ego can protect them from the consequences that are pressing upon them. Each day, this weight grows heavier, creating an inescapable restlessness. The fortress they've relied on, their pride, begins to falter. It becomes clear that their usual tactics, ignoring, denying, or justifying their actions, offer no refuge. They come to a moment where they see that there is no escaping this force pressing them toward truth. This spiritual consequence is no ordinary feeling. It's a divine reckoning that cuts through every defense they have constructed. Have you noticed that those who once seemed untouchable often end up reaching out to admit their faults, unable to withstand the weight of truth? The pressure builds until it leaves them with only one option: surrender. Confessing stops being about preserving their image or minimizing fallout. Instead, it becomes about releasing the unbearable tension of resisting something far more powerful than their own will. It's in this surrender that they finally realize they are not in control. They cannot outrun the spiritual consequences of their actions. Isaiah 2:11 echoes this truth, saying, "The eyes of the arrogant will be humbled and human pride brought low. The Lord alone will be exalted in that day." In that moment of confession, they understand that their strength lies not in resistance, but in humility. This confession is no ordinary apology. It's a rare act of surrender, a humbling acknowledgement that they've reached the limits of their own power. For them, it's a moment of reckoning that exposes the futility of pride against the weight of divine justice. The admission becomes more than just an apology. It's a transformative release, a recognition that they're standing before forces greater than themselves. Have you ever wondered why those who hurt you often return, not out of strength, but out of a deep humility that seems to have taken root? This is the power of spiritual consequence, the realization that they can no longer escape the truth, and that true peace lies only in surrendering to it. 8. The energy of truth has started to haunt them. When someone wrongs a chosen one, they often try to hide their actions behind layers of deception, creating a web of lies that gives them a temporary sense of security. They believe they can maintain control by concealing the truth, unaware that every lie adds weight to their spirit. This falsehood, complex and tangled, soon transforms into a suffocating presence in their life, draining their energy and disrupting their peace. However, what they don't realize is that this energy of deceit is nothing compared to the relentless power of truth, a force that will not be silenced or buried. In the Bible, we see the haunting power of unconfessed wrongdoing in Psalm 32, Psalm 4-5, where David describes the heavy hand of God pressing on him when he tried to hide his sin. His strength was sapped as in the heat of summer, a vivid image of the soul-draining weight of hidden guilt. Similarly, those who have wronged you begin to experience the oppressive presence of truth, a haunting energy that encroaches on their reality, demanding acknowledgement. They start to feel this in different ways, recurring dreams that force them to relive their actions, unexpected memories that surface at the most inconvenient moments, or sudden waves of anxiety that wash over them, unprovoked. It's as though an invisible hand keeps reminding them of what they've buried, refusing to let them forget. Have you noticed that those who hide things from you often appear unsettled or jumpy? They may try to carry on as if everything is normal, but the truth has a way of breaking through, stalking their thoughts like a shadow they can't escape. This feeling intensifies, disrupting their peace and turning their nights restless. They wake drenched in sweat, haunted by visions of their wrongdoing. Proverbs 28:1 captures this perfectly. The wicked flee, though no one pursues. Their lies have bound them to an energy they can't escape, and the realization grows that they are pursued, not by you, but by the truth itself. The energy of truth isn't something they can simply ignore or push away. It infiltrates every part of their mind, creeping into their thoughts with a force that becomes impossible to resist. It's a primal pull, an undeniable call to confront the reality they've evaded for so long. Despite their attempts to brush it off, they feel this energy growing more insistent each day, as if the truth itself has taken on a life of its own, pressing down on them until they can no longer deny it. At this point, they realize that the only way to silence this relentless haunting is to confess to you, to finally acknowledge the truth they've hidden. In doing so, they come to understand that the weight of their lies is far heavier than the act of coming clean. The moment they admit what they've done, they're freed from the entangling energy of deceit that has haunted them. By confessing, they find liberation, breaking the chains that have bound their spirit to a shadowy existence. For them, confession isn't merely a relief. It's a necessary release from the haunting energy that has consumed them. Have you ever wondered why those who've hidden things from you eventually feel compelled to reveal the truth, even if it means facing discomfort? This is the power of truth. It won't rest until it's acknowledged. And for those who've wronged you, finally confessing becomes the only way to break free from the shadows that have followed them for far too long. 9. Their spirit is seeking your forgiveness to find rest. Deep within, there is a part of them that intuitively understands a profound truth. Forgiveness from a chosen one is transformative, a unique form of grace that heals and restores in ways they can't fully articulate. Forgiveness, in this context, isn't merely a kindness or a way to move past a mistake. It's a divine balm that purifies the spirit and rebalances the soul. Though they may not fully comprehend it, their spirit craves this forgiveness intensely. It's not just about alleviating guilt. It's about cleansing their energy, removing the weight that has tainted them since they wronged you. This yearning runs deeper than words, deeper than the surface level of remorse, manifesting as a hunger for release from the spiritual chains they've created. In the Bible, we find this need for spiritual reconciliation in the story of Zacchaeus, the tax collector, in Luke 19:1-10. Zacchaeus, a man burdened by his past wrongdoings, sought Jesus' forgiveness, knowing it held the power to transform his life. When he received it, he experienced a sense of redemption that reshaped his spirit and allowed him to walk a path of wholeness and integrity. Similarly, those who have wronged you sense that your forgiveness is essential for their own peace. They carry the knowledge that holding on to their deceit has darkened their spirit, leaving them feeling heavy and disconnected from true joy. Without your forgiveness, they wander in a state of spiritual unrest, struggling to find clarity and inner peace. Have you ever noticed how those who hurt you often return, seeking not just an apology, but a genuine release from the burdens they carry? This is the transformative power of forgiveness. They know, even if subconsciously, that your forgiveness can liberate them from the haze of shame and regret that overshadows their life. They find themselves caught in a fog, unable to fully connect with happiness, love, or inner peace. The awareness that your forgiveness could lift this weight gnaws at them, reminding them constantly of what they have lost and what could be restored. This need for your forgiveness isn't superficial. It's a soul-deep yearning, an intense desire for the freedom that only true forgiveness can provide. They understand that without facing you, without admitting the truth, their spirit will remain trapped, bound to the emotional turmoil they've created. Confessing to you becomes more than a mere apology. It's a way of seeking redemption, a journey toward reclaiming wholeness. They hope that by coming clean, they can unburden themselves, feeling the lightness that comes from being forgiven by someone with such profound spiritual insight. In seeking your forgiveness, they're not just looking for relief, they're pursuing a form of healing that allows their spirit to ascend, free from the weight of past choices. It's a quest for redemption, an essential step in restoring the peace and clarity they long for. Your forgiveness represents a pivotal turning point in their spiritual journey, a chance to cleanse their spirit and reconnect with the lightness they've missed. Have you ever felt that your act of forgiveness held the power to transform someone else's life? For those who have wronged you, receiving your forgiveness becomes their path to peace, a way to heal and return to their truest, most unburdened self. 10. They want to earn your respect, even if they don't deserve it. At the heart of their inner conflict lies a striking realization. They have lost something precious, your respect. They understand now that your respect is not a casual thing. It is a rare and sacred treasure, and through their actions they have willingly forfeited it. This loss gnaws at them, reminding them daily of what they once held and what their own choices have cast aside. In the depths of this awareness, however, a spark begins to stir, a desperate need to reclaim even a fraction of that lost honor. They feel compelled to confess, to reveal their faults, hoping that in doing so, they might regain a sliver of the respect they have thrown away. They know that your opinion holds a weight unlike any other judgment they might encounter. In a world filled with shallow validations, your respect stands apart. You represent a standard they long to reach, a mirror that reflects not only their past missteps, but also a glimpse of who they could be if they dared to grow beyond their faults. Proverbs 27:17 states, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another." This verse encapsulates the influence you have in their life. In your presence, they see the possibility of transformation, of rising above their own limitations. Have you ever noticed that those who wrong you often return, not just for forgiveness, but to seek a renewed place in your esteem? For them, this journey isn't merely about redemption. It's a path to becoming the person they aspire to be. The thought of confessing and possibly earning back a fraction of your respect becomes their guiding light, a source of hope in the midst of their turmoil. They desire to stand before you with their heart exposed, stripped of ego and pretenses, in a moment of raw honesty. In that act, they are not merely seeking your approval, they are seeking to reflect a version of themselves that holds integrity, vulnerability, and courage. This moment of confession is not solely about remorse, it is about the potential for transformation. They may understand that they don't fully deserve your respect yet, but the urge to earn it propels them forward, helping them find the strength to confront their wrongs. They long to be seen as more than the sum of their mistakes. They want to step out from the shadows of their choices and stand in the light of your acknowledgement, hoping that by confessing, they can rewrite their story. This confession is a powerful step towards stepping into a new narrative, one that allows them to shed the weight of past errors and rebuild trust. They recognize that this journey toward respect isn't a right but a gift, one that requires honesty and humility to receive. By owning up to their actions, they hope to grow into the truest version of themselves, a person worthy of your respect and of their own self-worth. 11. They hope you hold the power to unblock them. After wronging a chosen one, they begin to notice a troubling shift in their life, a sense that everything is suddenly and inexplicably stuck. Relationships that once brought joy now feel strained, with friends either growing distant or conflict arising unexpectedly. Their career, once a source of pride and purpose, seems stagnant, as if caught in a rut. Even their health, which they once took for granted, begins to wane, reflecting the inner chaos they can no longer ignore. This unsettling stagnation feels like a force beyond their control, an invisible wall blocking their path to abundance and joy. As they struggle against this force, they begin to suspect that their actions against you may be the root of this blockage. In the Bible, we see the concept of divine obstruction in the story of Jonah, who ran from God's calling and found himself in a storm until he turned back to his purpose. Similarly, those who have wronged you may sense that their transgressions have disrupted the flow of positivity and success in their lives. Have you ever observed that people who betray or hurt you often experience a noticeable downturn, almost as if an unseen force is closing doors that were once open? This is the power of spiritual consequence, a natural rebalancing that unfolds when they step out of alignment. Subconsciously, they start to see you as a gatekeeper, a figure who holds the key to unlocking the abundance they miss. The realization dawns that their actions not only hurt you, but may have severed their own connection to the universe's blessings. It's as if their offense against you has created a barrier, cutting off the flow of life's gifts. In their mind, making amends with you becomes essential, a path back to harmony and abundance. This isn't merely about resolving guilt, it's a bid for freedom, a way to lift the weight that has stalled their progress and left them feeling lost. This desire to confess and seek your forgiveness is to them an act of faith. They believe that by acknowledging the wrong they've committed and making things right with you, they may have a chance to restore balance. Proverbs 28:13 says, "Whoever conceals their sins does not prosper, but the one who confesses and renounces them finds mercy." They see confession as a means to return to the path of prosperity and peace, hoping that your forgiveness can act as a catalyst to reopen the channels of positivity that have closed off. In this way, your forgiveness becomes more than just an absolution. It represents the potential for transformation, a return to a life filled with connection, opportunity, and health. They understand that confessing is not just about clearing the air. It's about healing the spiritual wound that has blocked them from the life they once enjoyed. The hope is that, with your forgiveness, they can once again feel the energy of abundance flowing through their lives, regaining the vitality, creativity, and joy that has been missing. For them, this moment carries the weight of not only regret, but the hope that their confession will unlock the door to a brighter future. Have you noticed how those who come back to make amends often experience newfound peace or success afterward? This is the power of reconciliation. It realigns them with the universe's blessings, allowing them to step back into the flow of abundance. Your forgiveness symbolizes a return to a life of connection, opportunity, and fulfillment. A life they now realize they cannot have without first making things right. 12. They feel the spiritual power shift as you rise. As a chosen one, your spiritual journey has become a vibrant tapestry of growth, elevation, and profound transformation. You're not just existing, you're actively rising to new heights, and that shift doesn't go unnoticed. They can sense the change in your energy, the way your presence now radiates strength and purpose. Meanwhile, their own journey has stagnated, leaving them feeling trapped in a cycle of their own making. It's a palpable contrast. Your spirit is soaring, while theirs feels heavy and stuck, like a ship anchored in turbulent waters. This disparity creates an undeniable tension, a widening gap that grows harder to ignore. They can feel the spiritual power shift around you, a dynamic force that highlights their own limitations and failures in the face of your ascent. They're confronted with the harsh reality of their choices and the consequences that have led them to this point. The urgency to confess begins to bubble to the surface, driven by a desperate need to bridge that gap before it becomes an insurmountable chasm. They're acutely aware that without some form of reconciliation, they risk being left behind, spiritually stranded and diminished. This confession is their attempt to realign themselves with you, to restore some semblance of connection before you fully move on. It's not merely about seeking forgiveness. It's about acknowledging the power dynamic that has shifted so dramatically. They recognize that as you ascend, they are at risk of being eclipsed entirely, and the thought of that isolation is terrifying. They want to pull themselves out of the shadows and step into the light, hoping that by coming clean, they can reclaim a space in your spiritual journey. It's a recognition that your growth doesn't just impact them, it opens the door for their own potential transformation. Ultimately, this act of confession becomes a crucial step in their desire for redemption, a last-ditch effort to realign themselves with your powerful energy. They hope that by facing their wrongs, they can shift the tide of their own stagnation and find a way back to the spiritual path they once lost. They yearn to be part of your journey again, not as an anchor, but as someone who can walk alongside you, enriched by the connection that once brought them joy. The journey of seeking forgiveness and confession is not merely a transactional exchange. It's a profound exploration of the human spirit, laden with complexity and depth. For those who have wronged a chosen one, the stakes are nothing short of existential. They grapple with a multitude of fears, regrets, and realizations that intertwine to form a desperate need for redemption. This quest for honesty is not just about making amends. It's a pathway to reclaiming their essence, a vital step toward unearthing the abundance that once flowed freely in their lives. In reaching out, they acknowledge the sacredness of your respect and the power you hold as a gatekeeper to their own liberation. The act of confession becomes their lifeline, a thread that could potentially weave them back into the tapestry of your elevated existence. They recognize that this isn't just about alleviating their guilt, it's about the hope of spiritual alignment, a chance to rise alongside you rather than be left in the shadows of their own making. Ultimately, their longing to confess reflects a deep yearning for connection, a desire to bridge the spiritual distance that has grown between you. They seek not just forgiveness, but an opportunity to rediscover their place in the world, to align their path with the light that you embody. As they summon the courage to speak their truth, they step into a moment that transcends mere words. It becomes a transformative act that echoes through the fabric of their being. Whether or not their confession leads to reconciliation, it marks a pivotal moment of self-awareness, courage, and the possibility of redemption. In this intricate dance of souls, they come to understand that the journey toward forgiveness is as much about their own awakening as it is about restoring the bond with you. Thank you for joining me on this journey to understand the depths of spiritual accountability and the power of forgiveness. When someone wrongs a chosen one, they're brought face to face with consequences that go beyond this world. An awakening that calls them to realign with truth, humility, and growth. Remember, as a chosen one, your presence and forgiveness have a unique power to guide others back to light and integrity. By walking in this strength, you remind others of the sacred energy each of us carries and our collective responsibility to honor it. If this message has resonated with you, consider supporting our channel through Super Thanks. Every donation helps us bring more insightful content to you, but whether you choose to donate or not, I am deeply grateful for your time, support, and engagement. Please don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more uplifting messages, and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share this video with those who might need to hear this message, spreading the light and wisdom we all seek. May God's blessings be with you all, guiding you in strength, peace, and love as you continue your journey. Stay blessed and keep shining.